30th, 2019 council work session. Before we begin, I know the city manager has comments, and I'm just going to talk process a little bit with council, which is we have a report on the downtown fiber project, and then we have a town square discussion, and I'm expecting the town square discussion to take a lot of time. So we're hoping to condense the conversation about downtown fiber. It's not the last time you'll have a chance to ask questions and have them answered, and so we'd like to keep it within 30 minutes so that we have plenty of time for the downtown update, and thank you for your forbearance on that, Ann. Okay, with that, turn it over.
Thank you, Mayor. I just actually wanted to talk about something a tiny bit off topic and thank our partners at Lane County and St. Vincent de Paul for coming together yesterday in a really short amount of time to open a warming center for 2 nights. We know St. Vincent's has been struggling to figure out how they were going to open those earlier than November 15th, so it took a lot of leadership and last-minute work by everybody to make that happen, and I think the numbers that I heard were over 140 people spent the evening there. So I also wanted to use this time to just remind people that during the day, if you're listening to this or in the work session, our libraries, both of our branch libraries downtown and all of our community centers and pools, or anything that's open is open for drop-in warming during the day. So hopefully people are staying warm these next couple of days. So that's what I wanted to say about that before I turn it over to my doppelganger, Ann Fifield, to talk about downtown fiber.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. So I asked for a little bit of your time on your calendar so I can give you an update on the downtown fiber project. This is just an update. I'm not asking for any action today. The fiber project was one of the projects that was funded by the 2016 amendment to the Downtown Urban Renewal Plan. That plan allocated $3 million to the high-speed fiber network in the downtown. The fiber project included 2 distinct elements. The first was the fiber network, which connects buildings to a central connection point, which is known as the Willamette Internet Exchange, or the WIX. And the second element of the project is an expansion of the WIX. I am happy to report that we have completed the construction of the fiber network, and it is having positive economic impacts. The WIX expansion is not yet completed, so today I'm just going to focus on the fiber network. This map shows the boundary of the network, which is just the area where electric utilities are already underground. EWEB moved the electrical system underground in the late 1950s. A few years ago, EWEB determined that it could house a fiber network in that existing infrastructure. Using the existing infrastructure was a cost-effective way to establish a fiber network. We didn't have to trench the streets. We simply opened existing infrastructure. We named the network HugeNet and created some marketing materials so we could explain the network to property owners and businesses. I have some HugeNet stickers here if anybody wants any. We needed to explain how the network works because it is different from your typical telecom services. HugeNet is an open access network. EWEB owns the network, but they do not service on it. They don't provide internet service on the network. It's open access. The fiber is available to be leased by any internet service provider, or ISP. The ISPs lease individual strands from EWEB, and those ISPs provide the service. This open access model has created a competitive landscape in downtown Eugene. We now have 6 ISPs competing for business, and that competition has led to lower prices and faster service. We've seen prices decrease by about a factor of 2, and speeds have increased by a factor of 10. The fiber project has been a multi-agency partnership. EWEB, LCOG, the Technology Association of Oregon, and the city all played essential roles. EWEB owns and operates the fiber network. LCOG owns and operates the WIX. TAO has provided technical and communications support throughout the whole project, and the city provided the funds. The construction of the underground network came in at about $1 million under budget. However, the WIX expansion has seen its budget grow by about $1 million. So we're even there. We were also awarded a grant from the Federal Economic Development Agency. That grant is a reimbursement grant, and that means we have to spend the money first, and then the EDA reimburses us. We have not yet received funds from the EDA, but we expect to receive about $1.7 million. The majority of the funding to date has come from the Downtown Urban Renewal District. A small amount came from the Riverfront Urban Renewal District, and then some came from the Telecom Fund. But until the WIX is completed and the EDA reimbursement arrives, we don't have the final accounting known. EDA is the Economic Development Agency. Businesses in the downtown have responded very positively. This picture shows the reaction from a business when it got connected. They posted this image to their Facebook page, and it's the results of their speed test. Now, 82 buildings are connected to HugeNet. There were some buildings that were physically unable to connect. Usually their electrical connection lacked the capacity to share space with the fiber. But the network continues to be expandable. Buildings will be able to connect to the network in the future, which will be important as new buildings get constructed. A couple of weeks ago, you all had questions about expanding HugeNet beyond downtown. In order to do that, we need to understand the technical approach, how you physically build it, how much it would cost, how to pay for it, and what ownership would look like. And our next task would be to scope out that work. If council's interested in that scope, we can come back to you once we have some more information on that. So this project has had a positive impact on Eugene. It has made the downtown an attractive location for firms that are data intensive. One measure of the project's impact is on downtown office space vacancy rates. We started connecting the buildings in mid-2017. In that year, downtown vacancy rates for office space hovered around 10%. The latest data from mid-2019 show that vacancies have dropped to 7%. Our office buildings are fuller. There are more people working downtown. The network has also had positive impacts outside of downtown. For example, both the Springfield School District and Eugene 4J are using services that rely on the system, and they've seen their speeds increase and their costs go down. Because of the fiber network, we have seen existing businesses expand, we've seen startup companies choose to locate here, and we've seen out-of-town firms open secondary offices here. To help show the impacts, we've worked with the Technology Association of Oregon to create a short video that has some of these businesses saying in their own words how HugeNet has impacted their business. I'll show this video and then we'll open it up for questions.
Eugene, Oregon has been one of the best places to live in the country. Now, its downtown is also one of the best places in the country for internet access.
Being downtown and being part of HugeNet and being able on the fiber is critical for our business.
The need for the high-speed internet is key to supporting our customers.
When I have to upload 500 large video files, I do a quick drag and drop, and I know it's going to get there quickly.
If you look at the business we have now, almost all of it requires HugeNet. If we didn't have HugeNet, we just couldn't do the business we have.
This overnight success has been decades in the making. A team from Eugene Water and Electric Board, the City of Eugene, Technology Association of Oregon, and Lane Council of Governments partnered on a multi-year project to establish HugeNet, bringing world-class internet access to downtown Eugene.
With the expansion of our customer base and their unique needs, especially the larger customers, we needed to have a true support center. And so that's what we did a year and a half ago, is we set up this site and started staffing it and helping our customers. And it was a logical choice.
Now, Fiberline makes us seem that much closer to San Francisco or Orlando or what have you, which I think will help realize the promise that Eugene's people have always had.
It was absolutely one of the factors that we took into account when deciding to base the company out of Eugene, was the access to the fiber.
The fiber is here and business is booming.
We're doing co-development with EA on Madden in Florida, 3,000 miles away, and their team size is 400 people or more. Being able to do that requires a lot of internet bandwidth.
because of the kind of content that we create, a lot of video files, a lot of kind of data-intensive transfer. So being able to move that from here up into the cloud is really important for us.
In 3 short years, Eugene has gone from an average internet speed that was the 22nd slowest in the state of Oregon to offering some of the best internet service in the world, helping make it a highly desirable city for new and innovative companies.
And the employees of the tech industry, they spend their money locally. And so that's money that comes from, in most cases, out of the state, brought into Eugene and dumped into people's pockets.
EugeNet's expansion has been one of the most successful economic development programs in the history of the city. It has enhanced parallel efforts to grow and retain the talented workforce graduating from our local schools.
One of our business models is to utilize in-university students to help us create our product because they have the digital skills that are necessary that we're trying to impart on other people.
Right now, out of our 50 employees, probably 20, 25 are part-time university students, either from the University of Oregon or Lane Community College.
The fiber infrastructure has made it possible for local private firms to attract millions of dollars of venture capital, creating new economic opportunities for Eugenians. It helped make it possible for grassroots community groups to successfully compete for funding, and partnerships with Mozilla and US Ignite. Partnerships which have helped cultivate learning opportunities for hundreds of local innovators, educators, entrepreneurs, and technologists. Everyone benefits. Our thriving community is beginning to see the benefits of the largest open access fiber network in Oregon.
We had to be on our fiber. It would have been a deal breaker to be anywhere else.
Over 25 high-tech companies have been added to downtown Eugene in the last 2 years, bringing Lane County's total to more than 470 tech companies, which employ over 4,000 people.
I think what's really great about it is that EugeNet is the result of cooperation. It took people from the city, it took people from the TAO, it took eWeb, all realizing that this was an important thing that really needed to be done to aid the tech community. And they came together and they made it happen.
EugeNet and its community partners are helping to create new economic opportunities and to build a stronger and more resilient community. Community, connectivity, accessibility.
That was a terrific video. Thank you very much. Very exciting. Are there questions or comments from council? Chris, Claire, go for it.
Yeah, this is just incredibly exciting. And I can remember 25 years ago, first having the conversation about this. And what's exciting is there was a vision 25 years ago, and this is when the vision actually becomes a reality, which you don't always see. And so I just wanted to take a minute to call out some of those early pioneers who had the vision, and we're only now beginning to see it. And the one I definitely want to call out is Milo Meacham, who had the vision 25 years ago. I remember working with him 25 years ago, talking about what fiber could do if we could get it in the ground and having to convince the partners to do it. And I think his contribution was so critical that LCOG has renamed their WICs the Milo Meacham WICs.
Thank you for saying that. Claire.
Thank you. Well, thank you for this very exciting update. It is just wonderful to see such success in a project that when we entered into it, could have appeared risky to some in the community. What kind of return on investment are we going to get here? And I think, Chris is hearkening to visionaries who brought this to us. I mean, I don't know that this council can take a lot of credit for being visionary, but we were responsive to that vision and made the investment and joined with the partners, and to see the result in terms of new companies and new employment opportunities and the things that those companies are producing is super, super exciting. And I'm really pleased to see Eugene on the map because of that. I definitely want us to see the next phase of this project scoped out. I made that very clear when we had these initial discussions 3 years ago, or whenever it was, that we needed not just to keep these benefits isolated in downtown, but really figure out a way to expand them to more residential folks and as far out as we can. I recognize that's a huge infrastructure challenge and how we would pay for that. You know, those answers are not all right in front of us now, but I would like us to start digging into that and figure out if we can lay out a map and a way forward to bring this benefit out beyond our downtown core.
Okay. Great. Alan?
Yeah, I think this is great as well. It's a long time in coming, but it's certainly worth it and a great boon to the jobs in the downtown and the revitalization of downtown. And when we first started talking about this, the idea was kind of a hub and spoke initially. And if we just did the hub, that would be great too. But the idea of doing a hub and spoke, so where would we go on the spokes and how would we do that and how would it relate to, in comparison to the cost of what we're doing now? We had the advantage of all the conduit already being there, so we just kind of filled it. And that was incredibly cost effective to do, which is why we came in under budget, among other things. So expansion costs, we'd have to trench streets, do a triple, double the cost.
There's a lot of different ways to build it physically. In the time that I've been working on this, I've seen many cities do it many different ways. There's a lot of choice there. There's not an obvious path to go. And I talk to a lot of vendors who come and talk to us and say, you should do this, and we're the right way to do it. And so there's so many choices. It will take some very serious analysis to figure out what's the right path for the community. And we just haven't done that work yet. I can't answer the cost. I've heard wildly different estimates.
More.
Well, it wouldn't be free.
Yeah, I'm with Claire. I'd like to see kind of scoping out that next, what it would, and get people's imaginations going and getting people excited about this, because it is going to be not a cheap thing to do, but it's going to be a very beneficial thing to do and a necessary thing as we move forward. I'm wondering about private-public partnership in regard to that and how that might work, and if it's possible we have this publicly owned network right now, and a private entity could connect to it potentially, and then how that would work. You don't have to answer that question right now, because that's part of it as well. Because, I mean, we can either expand it publicly or we can extend it through a public-private partnership with some entity. So all those different permutations will be a part of this plan. And then as well, I'd like to see, eventually see a return on investment or a rate of return on this investment that we made. I think it's an investment. I'm not sure that in the short term it's paying for itself, but eventually it will. So I'd like to see that as part of the
Hey, Emily.
Thank you for all this work. It's very exciting, and I'm so happy to hear that it's so successful. I was at the cutting of the ribbon, the joining of the fibers, and got to watch that picture of the speeds going so fast, and I was really jealous. I live a block from where I could get this, so I'm very, very interested in what it would take to expand. If downtown is filling up, if we had an expansion, there would be more locations for business. That would be a good thing. People wouldn't be as jealous of downtown. You know, I think, of course, there's many different ways, but putting utilities underground I know is really expensive, but it is a goal. It's aesthetic, it's safer in windstorms, it'd probably be better in an earthquake. And I know when Willamette Street is having the repaving, there was a lot of ask for putting the utilities underground. And I guess it was prohibitive, expensive-wise, but it was an opportunity that if those kind of things come up again, I think we should put some more effort into their feasibility. I'm also really interested in keeping part of it publicly owned the way we are now, because with poverty and everybody's dollars stretched, I pay $120 a month to Comcast, and it really bites into my budget. So like we want to make things affordable. This is something that will benefit everyone, not just businesses and schools, but the regular people will also feel happier to be here. And I'm all about happiness. So I'd like to see that expand since we have such a success to build on. Go, team, go. Thanks.
Any other? Yeah. Go for it, Chris.
Well, one last thought, and it's kind of something that Emily talked about, and it's maybe something of a spoiler alert. We've been dealing with some of the policy issues around fiber up until now, where to put it, there's things like that. And I would characterize those as relatively easy compared to some of the policy decisions we're going to have to make in the future. When you look at this kind of fiber, you have what's called the first mile, the middle mile, and then the last mile, the last segment. And for me, the ultimate goal is what is your connection in your home? That's what you were referring to. It's great to have it in businesses. It's great to spread it out of a spoke and a hub. But the ultimate goal, the ideal, I guess I should say, the vision goal, is to you ultimately have your personal home hooked up to the same level of high-speed fiber that other people have. And that would be what benefits the whole community, and my whole community would support it. But there's a host of policy decisions that need to be made, and Ann is exactly right. There's any number of different ways you could achieve that final mile. I mean, you can get out to a certain level relatively inexpensively, relatively easily, but getting it into every single neighborhood and every single home, there's a huge number of ways to do it, some of which have major policy implications. And at the last meeting, when I mentioned you could do away with 5G, I wasn't talking about telephone service. I was talking about the wireless that might be required to do that final mile, as opposed to, say, trenching fiber to every single home. That's a huge policy implication, because if you want to trench fiber to every home, that's a huge amount of money, whereas some other wireless capability would be easier, but it would have its own policy implications. So as they work to talk about what are the ways we could ultimately build out into people's homes, we have to really consider the policy implications of all the different ways you could do that. Because I don't think it's our goal to only have fiber out to a certain point and then people in their homes don't have the ability to access that. But the way to get that final mile into their homes, I think, is a major decision point for us, and we have to be very knowledgeable about what exactly is the best way to do it for the result and for the cost.
Greg, did you need a...
Mayor, I wanted to get in the queue. I've got a couple of questions. So I note that 4J has access to the network right now. Are there any specific plans to look at what you can do for the Bethel School District? And I'm saying that in terms of there may be some monies out there and on the federal level that support, this connectivity with rural communities. And my thought is, what could we do with a partnership with somebody like Junction City, for example?
I'm not prepared to answer. That's got a lot of complexity in it. There's the schools. Bethel is relatively well connected in terms of infrastructure. I think that to my knowledge, they're not using one of the 6 service providers to service their infrastructure. And there is a regional planning effort being led by LCOG right now to look at these regional issues, because those partnering and leveraging off of each other, how Junction City connects into and how Veneta can connect into and how Cottage Grove can connect into, if we can all plan it together, there's a lot of opportunity to leverage off of each other. And so it is part of that conversation that's that's part of this regional conversation led by LCOG.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
Does that take care of it, Greg?
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so very much. And so thank you. Very exciting presentation. And I'm thinking it's clear that council would like some scoping on the next round. So thank you so much.
You did it in less than 30.
I know you did really, really well. Thank you so much. Okay, next up.
To go back to work early.
Town Square project update.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm struck by how that last conversation is actually very tied to this conversation, because in the same way that the history of those steam pipes has led to future innovation, the history of the town square is really also how we connect to each other. And it's how our community connects to you as the government. It's how we connect the rural to the urban. And I was just thinking about I think both markets are represented here today, and I think they would tell you that the town square is as essential for their business connecting with their customers as that fiber is for our tech companies. So I hadn't thought about that before today, but I was just struck by that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the journey we've been on with this town square project. And literally, it's been a journey since 1856, I think, when Mary and Eugene Skinner dedicated this as the town square. But I've been reflecting a lot on a journey that I went on in the early 90s, and it was on the Appalachian Trail. And there were periods of time on that trail, it's a 2,000-mile trail, where we just never thought we were going to get to the end of it. And in particular, we felt that way in Virginia, because Virginia is 500 miles of a 2,000-mile system, and it's up and down ridge lines. And there was just so many times that we just never thought we were going to get out of Virginia. And I still say that about projects today. I'm like, oh, I remember this feeling. We're in Virginia. And sometimes I think that this project has felt like that. There's a picture up there of a rock cairn, and that's the piece that has really struck me about this metaphor, is that one of the things that was really essential about being on the trail is that you always knew where you were. You always knew you were on the right path because you could see a white blaze from wherever you were. You could see the one in front of you, or you could see the one behind you. And when you were on these rocky ridges where there was no place to put a blaze, there were rock cairns. So even when it was foggy, you could see the next rock cairn before you couldn't see the last one. And that's what kept you safe, and you knew where you were going. And I think that's exactly how we want you to feel on this project. We want you to be able to see what's clearly ahead of you and what's behind you, so that you can make decisions every step of the way about, are we going forward, are we pausing? And similar to the Appalachian Trail, there's also these side trails that are blue blaze trails, and you can kind of go over and look at a waterfall, and you can come back, and there may be times where you want to go blue blaze over, and I'll say, okay, well, we're blue blazing. Let's get back on the white blaze trail. But I think having that clarity and understanding where we're going will just help everybody feel kind of like, remember that you're in control of this whole topic. The team is going to talk about the vision for the town square today. It's a very exciting community vision, and very similar to what we did with the riverfront. We will start to unveil some of the numbers that are associated with that, and you'll see it's a pretty significant investment. So what's going to happen in today's work session is they'll share the vision, and then we'll start to talk about what those numbers are and our plan for how we refine those or change the funding plan so that they eventually kind of match up at the end, and you have a project you can feel really good about. And I just want to say lastly, partly because of the work session we had on Monday where you were talking about the riverfront urban renewal projects and different things you might want to invest in, I want to just remind you and all of us that we're thinking about this in the context of all of the projects. And one of the next things I'm going to want to be able to share with you, either at our next town square work session or before that, is a full spectrum of these are all of the projects that are happening right now and where we're at with funding and implementation, so you can kind of see where all of them are at while you're making decisions about any individual one. I think that would be helpful for me, and it seems like it would be helpful for you. And all of this is in context of downtown is vital, and we've talked about that a lot, what the economic importance of downtown is. But as I've been out listening to people, I think it's just really important that we remember there's a lot of priorities that are happening out in the neighborhoods and in each of your individual wards that are really not about downtown, and that we're thinking about those too and planning for those too. So with that, I will turn it over to Will and the team.
Thank you very much. I'm Will Dowdy. I'm in community development, and I'm very pleased to be here with you again today to talk about this project. I'm joined by Matt Kohler of Cameron McCarthy, who has been leading the concept design work, and Francesca Gambetti of Shields Oblitz Johnson, who's serving as our owner's representative throughout this town square project. There's also other members, especially of Matt's team, who are here with us today, and as Sarah mentioned, we've got some of the critical partners who have helped us, guided us through this project, helped us understand what they need in order to make this work for them. And so especially want to call out the farmers market and the Saturday market, and thank them for being here and for being a part of this. In a minute, I'll turn it over to Matt to walk through the concept design and the inspiring vision that the community has shared with us. And then after that, Francesca and I will talk about project implementation, what's known, what's not known, and how we get you the information that you need to make the important decisions. So Matt.
Thank you. First, I just want to say it's been a pleasure to work on this project to date. I spent the last 20 years in my office in the Quackenbush building looking at the park blocks. So it's very satisfying to be able to be part of this community process at looking at what our future for the town square looks like. So I'm going to move kind of pretty quickly through some of the concept designs so we can get into more of a discussion following that. But so generally here, I'm going to just kind of walk through the overall site plan and the context, but then we have a really great video that kind of takes you through an in-person walk through the town square, which I think is more helpful in seeing the space itself and kind of the elements that are within and where they might be located. Generally speaking, our project has included what is considered the butterfly lot currently, as well as the 2 south park blocks. But that limit of work is really extended to the building facades of the adjacent buildings and businesses that kind of front into our town square, and how to really make this weave into that infrastructure in our city. So to the north, we have the location for the city hall, and that helps kind of set the town square area. I will note that in the concept design, we've really delved deep into the concept of the overall town square. However, with City Hall, we've really just located a location for the building and really envision the next process going deeper into a concept design for the building itself. To the south of that is the park block, which has a new, we're going to call it an open air / covered pavilion that can be closed off during winter months or inclement weather to allow for an all-season farmers market, but it also allows for uses by other parts of the community. So envision this as a covered open-air pavilion building that has roll-down or fold-down glass doors that help it become enclosed during those weather conditions. As we move south from there, we end up into the 2 park blocks, and on the west park block, we're envisioning a new fountain feature that's a little safer than what we currently have, something that's more interactive and allows children to play. And on the east block, we are looking at an improved covered stage area that both allows for that weekly use by the Saturday market, but also allows for larger events to occur in our park. The surrounding streets are all brought up to grade to allow for that connection to those adjacent businesses, but also to connect within the blocks. One of the things we really heard strongly from the community was we want this to feel like one place. And really important is that we're trying to maintain and keep all of the large existing significant trees in our town square because they really help mark that place and create it.
We've got a little bit of magic to do and to transition from the slides to the video.
This is also where I go with my radio voice, and I will just kind of narrate as we walk through. So. I'll note that we'll be entering the site from, as if you were walking from Kesey Square along the sidewalk adjacent to the Wells Fargo building. So we'll be entering on the southwest corner of the project. So we've just kind of entered into the site, and really these are the existing large conifers. You can see we've really tried to decrease or eliminate any of the tall walls or raised platforms. This is a new interactive fountain feature that could be both spray, it could be mist, it could be just a thin pool. The idea that it's very controllable so that for various events, it can be adjusted on a daily or weekly basis. Really about letting kids play in it. As we move through, you can see there would be the opportunity for custom furniture or seating opportunities, nice lawn areas, but really kind of focusing on those existing trees. Here we're now moving across to 8th Avenue, and you can see that as we kind of brought it to grade, we're now entering the farmer's market location, which really allows for an expanded farmer's market and maybe a fun holiday festival for Halloween. The pavilion is on the left, and you can see it in its kind of open air way with the doors rolled up. City Hall is in the, we're moving towards City Hall. At this location is kind of the introduction of North Park Street, but an at-grade street so that it's really pedestrian-focused. You may be able to pick out a few farmers market people in this photo. This block allows for farmers market to kind of expand their future size, kind of their long-term goals for the size of their market. We've also been working very closely with the Saturday market to make sure that their current layout and how they set up their tents works within this design with a goal of not displacing users as little as possible. As we move into the east block, you can see the location for the new stage. It does push back and expands the area for the food court for Saturday market, which has been a request. I have to thank our design partner Olin for the fun music here at the end. So I'll say as I move to the next slide, I hope that video helped give you kind of a feel for what we think our community will see as they move through our space. But really what I want to focus on next is how the community helped us get to this point. And really that started, it's kind of funny to look back and go, wow, this has been over 5 months. I used to have long, beautiful hair at the start. In May, we held our first event that we titled the Imagination Lab, and it was at World Pies, and we had 300 to 400 participants show up and more than 1,000 surveys completed. And really that gathering was meant to get information. We didn't show designs. We really asked for the community and stakeholders to provide us their thoughts and ideas. From that, we then took that information and created 3 concept options from that, from the survey results and stakeholder input. And we presented those at a block party in July that I've been told may be the largest single public input session held in our city. We had between 500 and 650 people show up, more than 1,000 survey responses. There was music, food, dancing. Before I saw the numbers, I felt like it might have been a success when at 9:30 I was still showing people the designs using the light on my cell phone because the park had gone dark. So we'll improve the lighting as part of the park as well. We then took all that information and in September came back with a single concept design that we then had in the East Park block and had 200 to 300 participants, more than 650 surveys completed. And really it was a great celebration. People were there to see the final concept, but also celebrate in it and celebrate as a community together. There was a lot of fun time spent with people just hanging out and talking. As part of that, just kind of to outline the public input, I was working with Julie from Cogito, who's been assisting us on this project, and our kind of overall feedback that we've received, we've had more than, with downtown stakeholders, we've had more than 40 small group and individual meetings with more than 250 stakeholders. We've had more than 2,600 respondents to the surveys. We've had, at the public events, we've had more than 800 participants, and many of those people attended all 3 events, which was great. We've had, through direct outreach, more than 75 events with more than 2,000 people. And our email and social media through our Instagram and website, we've reached more than 6,500 people. So we're estimating that we have probably reached out to more than 10,000 people through this community input process through this project. So as part of that, the feedback we've received after the last September shindig is that we asked a number of questions about Is the design safe and welcoming? Is it green and functional? Is it active? Is it memorable? There were a number of questions, and I'm very happy to say that based on this pie chart, that almost 75% of our community either agrees or strongly agrees with those questions and with the design. 18% were neutral, and only 8% felt that they disagreed or strongly disagreed. This really seems like it really gives me hope moving forward into the next phase that we're on the right track.
Okay, well, a good plan is an implementable plan. And we've been tracking the project budget in parallel to the concept design as it evolves. The project team has weighed priorities to understand the right places to recommend investment and the right places to achieve savings, resulting in the concept plan that Matt just shared. Francesca has been working with the design team to put together our preliminary budget, and she can explain what this looks like and how it gets refined as we go forward.
So the cost estimating for the project is going to evolve alongside with the design as it progresses from the concept plan that Matt just presented to a more detailed set of construction documents. So, and as I'm pretty sure you know, we use contingencies to manage the budget risks and uncertainties that we have throughout the different project phases. So what we have to date is a total project budget that we've developed based on the concept plan. That includes a construction estimate provided by a cost estimator. And to that, we've added design and estimating contingencies, owner's construction contingencies, and then a very detailed breakdown of soft costs to come to our budget numbers. That summarized, in order to implement the full community vision, we've got a budget of approximately $13 million for the farmers market site and up to about $12 million for the park blocks. This does not include any costs that have been incurred to date for the acquisition of the butterfly block. So, and as Matt mentioned, City Hall was not a real integral part of the concept design phase. It focused more on the farmers market and park blocks. So that work is still to be advanced, and as is the budget. So there's a lot of really important decisions still to be made on that project, including what the space needs are, the seismic resiliency, the sustainability goals. So these are all things that we would anticipate addressing in the next couple of months and coming back to you for some discussions in December and January. I understand that last year Will presented to you the 2016 budget for City Hall, and those numbers were in the range of $850 a square foot. It's based on their GMP pricing, so that for the total project cost. That included a plaza and is in 2016 numbers, so it would need to be escalated to 2020. So that provides kind of a framework for a budget target, but I think we can find some efficiencies as we move through this process. In terms of the project schedule, we've worked with the design team to develop a very detailed schedule. Here you see a summary to give you a high-level view of that. Key takeaway is that we have found a path to get us through design so that we can have the farmers market and park blocks under construction during the market off-season, and achieving the second goal of having that done as well prior to the track and field world championships in the summer of 2021. So I loved Sarah's analogy of the Appalachian Trail. The schedules you see before you really don't have any time for blue blazing. Is a key element to keep in mind. So it really would need a very efficient decision-making process through the design phase that keeps us on a very linear path to permitting and construction. Secondly, it also assumes that we give authorization to the design teams to get going next week. So keep that in mind. and I think the biggest issue, again, is with the farmers market and park blocks and that the market constraints and trying to get those blocks done by the World Championships.
Okay, so as Francesca described, an arc of project budgeting, moving from concept design into later design phases. I'd like to describe a similar arc in the project funding for the park blocks and farmers market. So going back to 2016, you started this project with by identifying about $10 million of urban renewal funds for the farmers market and park blocks and open space. So this established a vision. Later that year, Lane County joined you in that vision with nearly $1 million in support of the farmers market. This spring, we began to work with the community to put specific designs to that vision. And what we found is that there are aligned, or that this aligned with other public infrastructure objectives. So these are opportunities to double the bang for our buck with about $1.5 million in park SDCs and about another $500,000 for pavement preservation from Public Works Engineering. So that adds up to over $12 million. So if we stop there, we can make something great with that. And in the way that we've seen those original urban renewal dollars attract other dollars, we're eager to see how we could further leverage those funds and build out more of the town square concept. And so that's something that it becomes part of the conversation going forward, is to see what else we can bring to the table and then present to you a more detailed plan of what we think is reasonable to do at this time and what we think is reasonable to do or to set aside and think of something that we could do later. But in either event, we will make sure that we can do something that's really great and that it doesn't preclude us to do more at a future time. So this leads us to next steps. We started this year with the purchase of the butterfly lot at the end of January. That was 9 months ago. Since then, our team has been immersed in community conversations and concept design. So what I'd like to do is come back to you in December and January with for another project update. That would be a specific focus on City Hall. It would be an opportunity, as Francesca mentioned, to confirm and discuss goals and assumptions that go into that project, to revisit conversations that you've had in 2016, make sure that what we have going forward is the right, has the right values and the right needs for the community. Then, as we get into the new year, we could have an opportunity to bring you a refined design. So this is what Francesca and I have been talking about as we go from the looser concept into something that's more precise. So we would like to come back and share more detailed information with you about budget and schedule and funding as we get down that road. So if you direct us to continue our work today, we'll have that information that you need to make critical project decisions. And one of those would be whether to schedule a public hearing about the use of urban renewal dollars for the farmers market and the park blocks portions of the town square. We've recommended that you direct us to continue the project in line with the concept design and to get to that next decision point. We have a motion prepared for you if that's the direction that you would like to go. But first, we're happy to answer any questions you might have about any of this. Thank you.
Okay, that was really a great presentation all around. Very interesting. I loved the video. It was nice to be able to actually walk through and see what that space would look like when it's all one level and keeping the trees. So I have, yes?
And I apologize, did you convene the urban renewal?
Oh, and I totally forgot. So let me.
Do you want to just go ahead and do that?
I think I will convene a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency. Actually, I have to close out the council meeting. That's closing out. This is opening up the Urban Renewal Agency. Thank you.
Would you like us to present again?
Sorry, totally spaced it out. So, okay, Alan, I have you in the queue already, and then Claire. Okay, take it away.
You've heard of 1 minute Shakespeare. Yeah. I hope that the seismic and resiliency part of the new city hall is not a blue blaze, but a white blaze trail when we get to that part. But I liked your analogy. I love the design. I think the concept's great. I love the video. Walking through there is excellent. The amount of excellent public involvement you guys have done is truly impressive. On the level of the Red Wagon and the parks folks did, so I'm glad we're striving to hit a high bar on this stuff. You know, almost 10,000 people with 40 meetings, 800 people participating in workshops and 2,600 survey and 6,500 on social media. Those are impressive numbers. So I think we've got good input from the public. So I really like the design. I especially like the design of the Saturday market space and the stage. That seems to work a lot better because we got a Saturday market in a space that wasn't designed for the Saturday market. Now we would have that, so that would be awesome. Being able to do it when they're off season is also, I think, really critical. I think that will end up being a great venue. I like the redesign of the fountain and the way that all works, and that it could be at grade, so it doesn't have to be on. We can use that space for other purposes. I did have a question about what we would end up doing with the salmon sculpture, because that's kind of iconic for our town. It'd be great if we could incorporate it someplace back into City Hall and City Council chambers, or or somewhere in the park. And I like the farmer's market. I like the openness of it. And then the east side, I had a question about that. Is that the eastern portion of that's not in the structure, that's included in the plan that you have here in the estimated budget? That's okay. Because when we initially did City Hall, we had part of our budget for City Hall had a plaza in it. So that won't be necessary. So that'll be good. I noticed when we were walking through on the video, it wasn't called the Eugene Farmers Market. I always call it the Eugene's Farmers Market. Hint.
It's not.
No comment.
I really like this. I think it's really well done. Thank you for all the efforts that have been going on. Curious to get to the next stage.
Claire?
Talk about money.
Sorry.
Thank you. As much as Councilor Zelenka would like it to be the Eugene Farmers Market, it is comprised of farmers from throughout Lane County. So I believe it's rightly called the Lane County Farmers Market. I want to echo pretty much everything except that little piece that Councilor Zelenka said. I think, I participated in one of your outreach events, and I think it was maybe one of the smaller in terms of how many people turned out, and still it was very significant. And I think cumulatively, you've done excellent public outreach, and I have a lot of confidence that what you've designed here reflects the input from the public, as well as collaboration with the Saturday Market and the Farmer Market Board leaders to make sure that those partners are held close as we move forward down this path. That's incredibly important because of the legacy and the critical role they play in our community. And being able to provide a year-round space for our Lane County Farmers Market, has been a long-term goal, long before I joined this council, and to see the elegant and yet, I think, practical design that you at least showed us here, I think is really exciting. I really appreciate a lot of the details, taking out the curbs, making the all street grade. That's going to improve accessibility. It's going to reduce, tripping and make it a lot easier for people who have various mobility impairments to navigate both Farmer and Saturday Market. I like the opening up of the space and removing the walls. I think those walls there now are visually attractive, but I don't think they help make the space more usable or user-friendly. And I also really appreciate the much improved stage. I really like the fountain concept and the improved lighting, and also keeping the heritage trees, which I believe is very, very important to maintaining yet another legacy that space provides us. So I'm ready to approve the motion that's recommended to advance this design forward, and then we'll have to dig into the hard work of figuring out how we close the gap in our available funding.
Okay, Emily.
Thank you for the presentation. It's been fascinating watching this unfold, and like my colleagues, I truly appreciate the great public involvement, and hope that will be a model for the future. I'm especially pleased to hear that the goal of not displacing Saturday Market during their season is being accommodated. and that their desires for how those two blocks are set up so their long-term and attractive market can be sustained. One thing that I think is missing that I'd really like to see is a restroom on the park blocks, not have to go over to City Hall or Farmers Market, especially if we're going to try to attract more children and have the stage over there. It could be a real building. I just, of all things, that's what I think is the biggest thing missing. I love, like everybody else, that the trees are being kept, but when I look at the plans and the walkthrough, it just feels like so much concrete. And I think about how hot that's going to be in the summer. And I know it's more adaptable and usable, but it feels both cold and that it's going to be so hot in the summer. And on the list of the designs, attachment A, lawn is in there in skinny but big letters, and I'm wondering how the square footage of the lawn that's planned compares to what's there now.
Matt, do you know specifics or in general terms?
I know that it's increased because it was a request that we heard from the community. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that the amount of lawn space has increased. Generally, if you look at the west block where we currently have kind of the raised concrete area with the wooden deck, that area has a significant piece of lawn that was that's available because it's not a current location that Saturday Market utilizes. So what I think you're seeing is we're trying to push the lawns to the areas that aren't going to conflict with market layouts, but also allow for users to kind of sit on those edges and interact with the rest of the activities that are occurring within the town square itself. So it's been kind of this puzzle piece of trying to allow for those larger gatherings as well as the weekly use, and then also allowing for those families to come down and have lawn space to kind of sit and hang out.
I think the lawn's really important for children to play on. I like to picnic there at Saturday Market. So I appreciate that it's more, but I wouldn't mind if it was even more, because one of the things the city is paying to do is remove concrete, and here we are putting in more concrete. And especially over where the farmers market is, when the walk through, there's no real grass over there till you get to City Hall, and I didn't quite understand all those empty booth-looking things that were on one side and the pavilion on the other. I assume that just means farmers market's going to be so big that that's their portable booths?
Yes.
Okay. The pavilion looks about as big as City Hall. So I'm just wondering about how that matches up with our needs, and I'll be looking forward to that. But those footprints look about the same to me. My biggest concern is paying for this. It's a lot of money. And I have this idea from Councilor Taylor, so she might want to expound on it, but do we have to do it all at once? Thanks.
Okay, Jennifer.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the things my colleagues have said. It's a very exciting concept, and Emily just at the end of her talk got to what I wanted to ask. I want to make sure I understand this. So far you have identified just under half of the funding we would need for this particular design. Is that correct?
To build out the full community vision, yes.
Okay. So when you are asking us to approve this design, I have concerns about what that actually means, because while I think that your design is amazing and awesome and I would love to see it, I also like to live within my means. And just to be honest, the park is not my top priority in this town if I had to put more money towards something. So when we have, desperate needs in so many other areas. So there's going to be opportunities to decide, can we really afford this if we vote for this now? That is built into our system.
So what I could say to that, because I understand exactly where you're coming from on that, or I presume to understand where you're coming from on that. What I'm trying to do is to actually give you a different kind of choice. And so what we have done is we have taken a community design or a community vision, turned it into a design that we think is creates a highest and best use, or creates a space that really matches the things we've heard from the community. It's not. It could go grander still, but we think this is one that seems about right. We figured out an approximate budget to build all of that out. What we need to do now is we need to start to zero in on that design and understand it a little bit better. And that includes things like bringing a contractor on board to help us provide a more detailed cost estimate, someone who would actually be in a position to build it, and they start to provide their insight into that. At the same time, so that's one track. The other track is the funding, and what I wanted to convey to you is that the dollars that the council initially said this could go towards this project, it has attracted other dollars to it. Some from external partners, some internally, but that had been thought of as going to meet other needs. And so whether it's other opportunities for overlapping funds within the city, or whether it's opportunities to bring in outside money, we would like to do that. As we've been having conversations with people who are interested in this, whether it's private sector, or as we look at the opportunity for state or federal funds or grants, we haven't shared this concept with you yet, and so we don't have a concept that I can say, well, and our council is interested in us pursuing this. So so it limits the ability that I have to say, yes, we're serious about this. So if the council tells us to continue in this direction and indicates an interest in pursuing this, then those conversations become easier. Okay. I don't know how much money that we can actually gather at this point, but I know it's. I've seen what we've done so far, and I know that there's more money out there that would be interested in participating in this. So we would match those two things together and bring a plan of what we think is reasonable at this time, and then what we would do with the rest of the vision if we can't implement it at the time.
Okay, and that's what you're going to bring back to that second one?
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent, thank you.
Betty.
Thank you. So at what point do you get a contractor, after a public hearing or before?
The approach that we want to take with a contractor is it's a CMGC approach. So that's where you bring a contractor on board as part of your design team, as an advisor to you in the process. And so we would have them come and be that advisor to us soon, and then so they would be there to help us understand what's constructible, what does the schedule look like, and what are the costs going to be. And
so you're spending a lot of money before we know whether we're going ahead with it.
We're spending money. It's
what
not.
I'm concerned about.
Yeah. Yes.
We're asking if you want us to continue investing in this design and development of this project and project budget for you to implement. That's
I would prefer to wait for that till after we have a public hearing. Personally, I happen to think the parks are okay as they are. We need restrooms, and we need more places to sit. We need movable chairs, and we need tables. But I know you've had a lot of people participate, but I don't know that people all over the city even know it's happening. I remember when we did Shaping Eugene's Future, which most of you probably don't remember, but there were meetings in all the schools all over the city. And there was a lot of publicity, and there were inserts in the newspapers that people could fill out to say what they wanted, so that we really did have a lot of broad participation. And I'm not sure that has happened. I think that before we spend a lot of money, we should make sure that people know what we're spending it on. And I want to know what's wrong with the fountain that's there now. I think it's fine. You want to get rid of the fountain. We keep tearing things up in this city.
So I can touch briefly on a couple of those. We have, part of that outreach that I described has been kind of multiple meetings with different high schools. We even actually had elementary school kids looking at the design of actually the first public meeting we had was with an elementary school class that designed our town square out of clay, which was kind of a fun event. But no, we have met with like Willamette High School. There have been outreaches to the numerous schools and trying to get outside of just downtown core. We've really been trying to engage with the community at the edges, but throughout kind of all the wards of Eugene. As far as the fountain itself, it's slowly, I guess the term I'll use is failing. It is a rather, it's at an age that the concrete itself is starting to kind of fail. It does pose some safety concerns for kids. I call it mouth height. It's, kids trip into it and fall into it and they want to crawl into it, yet it's not really designed to have people in the water. It wasn't designed that way, which creates some health concerns. So the general goal was to replace it with something that pays homage to it, that kind of circular shape, while relocating the art piece that's within it to another location within the town square, which is what we'll be doing with all the existing artwork that's there. But the idea is to have a fountain back in that similar location that can allow kids to be in it. And also that it can be turned off to allow for use in that area where right now everything is set up to try to get around the fountain. It would allow that space to become more usable on just for different events that get set up in that area.
I remember a downtown fountain which was destroyed. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't maintained, and I think that's the way we tend to do things, is to let them fall apart and then replace them. You mentioned attracting money. Where's it? I'd like to know how we attract money.
Well, what I was trying to explain is that the vision for this town square is bigger than just a city organization priority.
I understand that, but I'm wondering about the attracting money. It sounds appealing.
Yeah. Well,
how do we do that?
So there are a lot of people who have expressed interest in making this real, and so that started with Lane County, and so that was one of the things when they saw the opportunity for the land exchange with the city. They started off with about $1 million that they wanted to put into supporting the farmers market, and then as we've gone forward, I've had a number of people say that this seems like something that whether they are just general community members or downtown businesses or others would like to find a way that they can contribute towards it because they see this as something that they take pride in or would like to be a part of. We also, whether it's our recreation department, cultural services, parks, they see opportunities for grants, which is a way that either the state or federal governments can be involved in making something in Eugene.
So there are people. You're saying there are people downtown who would like to see it changed, who want to give money? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm glad that the county's contributing. After all, this is the county seat. I know that Civic Stadium's having a hard time raising money, and I wondered how, maybe we should tell them if we know how to attract money.
We would be taking the same approach in a lot of ways that Civic Stadium is taking, and there'll be different people in the community that want to contribute potentially to a farmer's market than they might to Civic Alliance, and some of them might be the same people. So I think what we want to do is not give you, we don't want to limit it yet. We don't know enough about the actual cost of the design and what we might be able to bring to the table in funding to say this is all you should hope for. We think we just need a little bit more time to flesh out those ideas. I think you could totally give us direction to do a public hearing, and there's two different ways, and I'm not exactly clear on what you're hoping for. So one idea would be you'd just be having a public hearing to have the community come directly to the chambers and talk to you directly about what they're thinking about this project. The second is you will have to do a public hearing as part of allowing urban renewal funds to be used on this project, so you will have to do that. We had initially thought we would come today and do this work session and ask you to do that, and I anticipated you might want a little bit more time and a little bit more information before you're ready to do that. But if you want to do that today, you could totally direct us to have a public hearing.
Well, I want more information to the public and to be sure that everybody knows before we spend a lot of money. One of my objections to urban renewal, which I do object to, is that it's too easy to spend the money without people knowing it. It's just like, I call it a slush fund sometimes, which infuriates some people, but it is, I think that people should be, I don't think we're ready to start spending money on a contractor. After you spend a lot of money, then you say, well, we spent all that money, so we have to do it. And that concerns me. Thank you.
Can I respond really quickly to the contractor issue? So we do have an RFP currently out on the street that we should be through that process around December or January. And that relationship is really about a partnership, so having the contractor involved through the design phase. And it's not typically a very big expense. Their proposal will, through the RFP process, will include what their pre-construction fee would be to assist through the design phase. So it wouldn't be I'm a little reluctant to give numbers, but I've seen it, I'd say, in the $50,000 to $150,000 range.
Nothing, huh?
To go all the way through the design phase, right? So if you were to stop a few months into it, you wouldn't have really spent much. So if we're talking about coming back in February or March, we wouldn't have spent much of that at all if we need to pause, for instance. So right now we are looking at having a contractor selected in December, January. And again, it's really just having them as a partner in the design process. And then we would competitively bid the project at the subcontractor level once we have the 100% construction documents done. So it's still incremental, and there's always the ability to pause if we need to as we continue advancing the design phase.
Yes. So I'm just going to jump in for just 1 second to follow that. So what I'm hearing here, and hearing Betty's concern, what I'm hearing is that what you're trying to lay out for us is information that comes to us incrementally, but that is increasingly specific, so that it will help that decision-making process. So what we're trying to avoid is making a decision on a broad global thing that isn't very specific, and it would be the contractor who would help us dial that in a little more closely, so that if we had, when we get to the point of a public hearing, we would be doing it on more solid ground than where we are currently with how much we know.
Exactly.
I've got that right.
So we would get through a schematic level of design, which is just sort of the next milestone beyond concept development. And at that point, there's just more detail. Pricing is a lot more reliable. The budget will be much more reliable, and that'll also get us a little more time to collect the budgeting, the funding sources, and develop that strategy.
Thank you. Manager, did you have more to say? You're good. Okay, so I have Chris, then Alan, then Claire.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me back into the you can have it fast, cheaper, right, pick any two. And this kind of gets back to what Emily was talking about, is it possible to phase this project? And that gets under the fast criteria. For me, I think it's important that whatever it is we ultimately wind up doing, it needs to be right. And I'm willing to give on the timeline, and I'm willing to negotiate around the money to make sure that what we do is right. And under the heading of, well, what's the right thing to do? I think that's exactly what you have been doing. You've been trying to determine what's the right thing to do. I think there's still room to continue the conversation about what's the right thing to do. But I think in order to get a good handle on what's right, you have to have a little bit of thought and some planning. And in the context of construction and design, there's some money you need to invest in that kind of thinking. If I wanted to remodel my kitchen, I wouldn't hire somebody and say, I don't want you to take any measurements. You know, don't come in and do any of that stuff. I don't want to pay for that. I want you to just buy the cabinets and come in and start putting them in. No, you need to get measurements. You need to know what's going to work in that kitchen, and then you can go forward. And as long as that cost is reasonable, I think that's a good investment to ensure that we can do the right thing. I'm also very mindful of the fact that money is an important consideration here. And I think it's going to weave its way through all of everything we talk about. There will be many decision points along the way when we talk about how much money we have, how much it will cost. And I want to be as knowledgeable about what's the right thing we want to build so I can talk intelligently about how much money we need to do it. So for me, of those three, the one I'm probably most likely to give on, to Emily's point, is the timeline. If we have to do this incrementally, if we have to phase it, if there's ways we can spread this out, for me, that would be the more important consideration, because 50 years from now, people are not going to remember how many phases it took to build it. They may not even remember the full price tag, although I'm guessing this is Eugene. They'll probably remember in 50 years how much it cost. But they will walk down the street and look at that building, and they'll say, that was the stupidest thing they could have ever done. Or, you know, that's pretty good for what they spent on it. So I'm willing to give on the time. And so whatever time you need to do it right, I'm willing to give. Not forever, because I've already waited 6 years, and I don't want to wait a whole lot longer. But I want to be deliberate, and I think it will take some thought and some planning to get there. So the increment you're talking about in order to do some thinking like that, I'm perfectly comfortable with. And so I could approve the motion that's on here today, knowing that it's just getting us into that thinking and designing process that we'll then come back and we can refine as we go. So I don't have any red flags at this point. I think we're still okay, especially around the notion of doing it right.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, I had an interesting idea for a fundraiser. We could potentially sell the naming rights for the farmers market. Just like we do with sports.
Might lose $1 million.
Could get a lot of money. There are good things to go in debt for, and this, I think, is one of them. Phasing is an interesting concept, but it costs more. It's never cheaper later. It always costs more. It gets more expensive. A good example is the new City Hall. In fact, it's going to cost us $2 to probably more like $4 million more to do City Hall because of the delays that the City Council has put in this. I hope that's a lesson learned. The more we futz around with this and the more we delay it, the more it costs us and the less we're able to do. So I hope we can move expeditiously because time actually is money on these kinds of projects, and City Hall is a great example. I think it's really important, I didn't mention it, but keeping the trees and the heritage trees and then adding more to it is a very important part of this. I'm a little bit concerned about, and continue to be concerned about, the integration of the new City Hall into the Town Square plan. Maybe you can describe how that we're ensuring a seamless integration of those things with respect, especially given the timing differences that we have, with respect to the design and the look and the elements and how they all fit together, and who the team is and how that works.
Yeah. So the idea is to keep these, you know, the idea of the town square was to take three projects that had these different lives and to bring them together, recognizing that they are part of a holistic place and that they'll be experienced together. And so we have, wherever we can, we have made sure that they advance together. And then where they need to be separated and looked at in different ways, we do that, whatever they need. So the concept design phase has been about the entire place, but has had a special focus on the park blocks and farmers market components. But throughout all of that, we've been mindful of the location of the city hall, the size and the massing of it, the orientation, and the way that the building could respond to the site, and then the way those pieces can integrate. As we go forward, we need to do, like I said, the next thing that we see as a really important milestone is to discuss what it is that you want to see that City Hall have, embody, kind of go back to those values, go back to those specific questions about what's in it, and just revisit that conversation so that we can have clear direction for the design team. Our approach is to have a single project team throughout the town square. And so that's one owner's rep. It's one landscape architect. We are negotiating with Cameron McCarthy to be the landscape architect. We're negotiating with a firm FFA to be our architect through the whole thing. That way we took RFP process to talk to find a landscape architect and an architect. And so for anything that's landscape related through this whole space, whether it's the city hall grounds or it's the park blocks, it's all done by the same hand. If there's anything architectural, whether it's city hall, the farmers market pavilion, the stage area, it's all done by the same hand. And so and then it's all built by a single contractor. So that's the intent that we have, and that's the way we would want to proceed. And so it all stays comprehensive in its approach.
Good. Yeah, that makes me feel a lot better. I like that integrated, comprehensive approach. I think that's the way to do this project because it needs to be seamless and be a town. If that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we are trying to do. As far as the public involvement is concerned, I think we are going to have public hearings. This isn't the last time this is going to come back to us by any stretch. And 10,000 participants so far is that's a lot of people, and that's sufficient for me to move forward. So one of the things that I think we often suffer from in Eugene is we think too small, and I think in this case we should be thinking big or go home. And I'm more interested in getting it right, which I think is thinking a little bit big, and then figuring out the rest of it later. So I'm prepared to support the motion as proposed and move forward on this path.
Okay. Claire.
Thank you. So I appreciate the rough estimate on what bringing that contractor in for consultation would be. That was a question I had. I just wanted to give a little more definition to these opportunities for outside organizations, individuals, corporations to contribute. I think the stage, the fountain, the pavilion, the benches all represent sponsorship opportunities, that there are going to be people out in the community eager to have their name on. I am not so interested in like the Phil Knight Farmers Market, I'll be honest. But setting aside that title.
That would be fast food.
Yeah. Very funny. So I think just getting those details out, that there are elements of this design that people in our community are going to think are very worthy of investing in and having their name associated with, and having the legacy of contributing to what I think is a space that it is actually poised for some change. Change can be difficult. We don't all like it. Thank God that other fountain downtown was torn down. It was hideous. And I think this space is ready to go through change that we can maintain and enhance its functionality for the farmers market and the Saturday market, and enhance its usability and make it a truly connected space. With right now, because of how the streets are designed and the curbs, it's kind of like two blocks that are separated and then now a parking lot across the street. And that's going to be very transformative, and I'm excited to see us get to that endpoint.
Betty.
Okay, several things. I didn't think, these motions do not have anything to do with City Hall, do they?
No.
After what Chris said, I wondered if we were voting on City Hall, and I was confused. Oh, no. As for City Hall, we should have done it a long time ago. We shouldn't have torn down the other one, and we should have proceeded with the new one. I agree with that, but that's too late now. I will read this motion. I can tell it's going to pass, but I think that we need to ask the public, do we need to do anything to the parks? I know that we need a city hall. I agree with that. And we need public gathering places. We need to do something with Kesey Square. But if we're spending, even though this money may be attracting other money, the money came from taxpayers, came from citizens. And sometimes we forget that. We think it just appeared there because it's urban renewal. If you look on your tax bill, which we're all just getting, I think you'll see an item for urban renewal. And I think that we need more public, we need to know from the public, do they really want us to change the park blocks? Is that an important thing to do? I think it's definitely important to have a city hall. A city should have a city hall. But I don't know whether those parks are, I find the parks rather attractive, and it's not just because I don't like change, I just like them. I was wandering through one day, and I saw a Slug Queen anniversary. It was our counselor, Emily Simple, who was having her 20th year anniversary as Slug Queen. And I saw there were some people, I just happened to be there. I didn't even, and there were some people who were staying at the Hilton, and they said, isn't this interesting? And people were picking up their cell phones and calling their family back home to tell them the interesting thing they found just going for a walk in Eugene. I think it's interesting enough now, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, well, and now maybe you would put a motion on the table.
Can I say one? I
Yes,
did have
please,
one
yeah.
more thing. If we're going to name anything, it should be the Lottie Streisinger Farmers Market. She was there every week. She was a founder. And I think a lot of people would like that. And I don't think she's going to give us any money. She's not alive anymore.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, you want this
Yes,
motion?
I would like it on the
I
table.
see
yes.
two up there. Is this
The first one.
this
One
one?
on your packet.
The one that's in the packet?
Yep.
Okay, I move to direct the agency director to advance the town square design based on the proposed concept design and return for work session in early 2020.
Second.
Okay, everybody ready to vote? Oh, comment?
Just on the last comment that Betty made, we didn't go over this. And this kind of addresses what Betty was talking about in terms of how people reacted to the different concepts. And one of the things that maybe you guys talked to it real briefly, but one of the things it says was the majority of the people that we've engaged with want to see some change there, and a lot of them want to see significant change. So how I gather that.
Thank you. All right, everybody ready to vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Greg?
Yes, Mayor, I'm in favor.
Okay, great. That's 6 in favor, opposed? 1. All right, it passes. Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. Very excited to hear about the next phase, and we are adjourned. Time.